Hey, hello everybody. Hold on one second while I just got a notification that my mic's not plugged in, so give me just a moment here. Of course, always gotta love the tech issues about when we're trying to get started on time. My camera didn't want to work, and then my microphone doesn't want to work. So if you can hear me, please let me know, because it's saying my microphone is not working. So let's see here. Please let me know if you can hear me. Say yes in the comments, because it's telling me that it's not working properly. Let me unplug it and plug it back in here. Let's see. Let's see if this is... Okay, if you can hear me, please let me know. I gotta love how you try to go live, and the minute you do, it tells you your microphone's not kicking in. So hopefully everything's working okay. Let's see. Okay, let me check my comments to see if somebody here can let me know if they're getting sound okay, and if it sounds like it does normally, because it's telling me here that it's not. Okay, good. So you guys are saying you can hear me, so that's great. I'll just leave it at that. I'll trust you guys over what the computer's saying. Okay, I can hear it on my side. Great. Hello, everybody. Welcome. How are y'all doing today? Hope everyone's doing well. I'm just having a casual day today. I'm wearing my t-shirt. I know I normally put on a collar shirt for you guys, but it's Sunday. It's a busy day. Got a lot of things going on. So I wanted to just hop on today and do a live Q&A with you. And I have about 30 minutes or so to answer as many questions as I can. So I want to just do my best to get through as many as we can, because there's some great questions here. And so let's just jump right in. If you are just getting this notification, feel free to drop a question in the comments, and I'll go through and try to answer all of them to the best of my ability, okay? So let's see here. Let me just really start at the top. Let me see if I can get everything loaded up here. Okay, so let's jump in. First of all, let me introduce myself, right? There's some new people in this group. My name is Jason Hamilton. I'm a chartered retirement planning counselor, and I run a financial planning firm called Keep It Simple Financial Planning. And we have this group here to help you get feedback, knowledge, insights. And every Sunday, I'll do a live video here typically to either train on something, do a workshop, answer live Q&A questions, and just do everything I can to really help you out to retire with confidence. So if you're new, welcome. Anytime you guys have a question, feel free to just ask the question. I still get a lot of spam in the group, people trying to post things like selling things, random videos, stuff that's just not really appropriate. So I do approve the comments, and sometimes, if they're inappropriate comments, I'm not going to approve them. So, but if it's just any sort of general retirement question, you're going to get it approved. So please keep the questions coming. There's a lot of great people in here, and a lot of folks in here that are willing to give you some really good feedback. So I'm really hoping that you are here, you're in the right place. And if you are looking to retire with confidence, then you're definitely in the right place. So we're going to help you out with that. So today we're doing something a little bit, we haven't done one of these in a little while, so I want to do a live Q&A with you. And let's pull some of these questions up here. So I'm just going to pull them in from the top of what it's showing me here on my screen. So hopefully you can see this here. All right. So the first question we're going to talk about today is there a point where a Roth conversion doesn't make sense? Can you please give an example? So yeah, definitely to give an example. So Roth conversions are something that you can do really at any time, okay? So the best time to do them typically is when you have low income years, because essentially what you're doing is, and for those who don't know what a Roth conversion is, let me take a step back. If you've never heard of a Roth conversion, what that means is you can take money that you put into an account pre-tax. So let's say you put it into your 401k at work, or you put it into an IRA, on your own, a traditional IRA, and you put that money in there pre-tax, okay? So when you put that in pre-tax, you get either a tax deduction, or you just don't pay tax on it when you first put it in, and then that allows your money to grow tax deferred until you need it, which for most folks is in retirement. So pre-tax retirement contributions are generally best for people that are in a higher income bracket. So there's no fixed rule, but right now with our taxes being the lowest they've been in, I don't know how long, probably forever or in a really long time. If you're in a 12% or below tax bracket, it might make sense just to put your money right into a Roth account. So if you have a Roth IRA or a Roth 401k, but if you're above that, and with my paper here, let's see. Get this. this here. So I have my little cheat sheet here that right now, currently, if you're married filing jointly, up to $78,950 of income, that will keep you in the 12% tax bracket. Anything above that, you will go to 22. Okay, and that's for married filing jointly. For single filers, the 12% tax bracket is $39,475. So anything above that will push you to the 22% tax bracket. And then head of household is $52,850 for the 12% tax bracket. And so, then married filing separately is pretty much is the same as single. So if you're in the 12% or below, depending how much time you have and how far away retirement's going to be, going straight to a Roth is probably the best idea if you can, if your income's not too high. But if you are contributing money to a pre-tax account, let's say you're 62 years old and you've been putting money in your 401k for the past 30 years, for example, and that's all pre-tax. And let's say you have enough money to retire at maybe 61, 62, or 63. Like we have a lot of folks in this group that's done well, and they want to retire early. Well, in between when you retire and when you take Social Security, there might be a really wonderful opportunity to take advantage of something called a Roth conversion. Okay, you can also do this during your working years because there's no real age restriction. But let's say you were working and you were making $100,000 for a long time, and then let's say you had a year where maybe you took some time off for sabbatical, or you took some time off because you had a child, and so you had 6 months off of work, and so your income dropped for that year. That may be a good time as well to do a Roth conversion. So what a Roth conversion is you put money in a pre-tax account originally to start, and then at some point you convert that money from pre-tax to Roth, and at that point you will have what's called a taxable event. Okay, so when you have a taxable event, then you're going to owe some money on that. You're going to have to pay taxes on that. So let's say you were making, let's say $200,000, and let's say you are a single filer and you are, in at $200,000, you're in a 32% tax bracket. Okay, so at a 32% tax bracket, it probably makes sense to put the money pre-tax because paying 32% of that money doesn't make sense unless you have a really long time. Really interestingly, I've done some calculations recently for some young clients that are like in their early 30s. And when you look at the long term, it actually made more sense for him to go Roth, even though his income was very high. But for the majority of folks, if you're in your 40s, 50s, or early 60s, and you're high income, it probably makes sense to put the money tax deferred. And then let's say you retire, and at that point, you either have some savings you're living off of, or you maybe have a small pension or something like that. And you don't have a bunch of income coming in that's going to be counted for tax purposes. So anything that's adjusted gross income that won't be counted for tax purposes. Well, then what you can do is take some of your money that was in pre-tax and then convert it over to a Roth and pay tax that year. Okay. So getting back to our question is, at what point doesn't a conversion make sense? Can I please give an example? So it's hard for me to give like a real life example on the spot, but I'll talk about a couple scenarios that I've had in working with clients. So I had a client that had about 80% of their money in a pre-tax account. So like in a 401k and traditional IRAs, rollover IRAs from previous jobs. Okay. So the other 20% was in a taxable account. So all that really means is the money was in a non-retirement account. So it's accessible anytime. And if they were to take it out, all they would have to pay is the capital gains rate on anything they withdrew. But that's not counted for income purposes. So when it comes to income purposes, the capital gains is separate in a sense to where it's not AGI the same way it is if you have from a traditional IRA or 401k. That money, when you withdraw it, that becomes taxable income, and that does increase your tax bracket for the year. So in this case, the client had about 80% of money that was pre-tax, had no other income sources that were coming in, and based on our calculations, they wanted to delay their Social Security to at least full retirement age, okay? And they were retiring at 61, so that gave us 5 years in between, okay? So that gave us a 5-year window to start moving some over from pre-tax to Roth, or pre-tax to post-tax, right? So when you do a Roth conversion, there's a bunch of rules that go in there. I have some notes here I want to talk about with you guys to give you some more detail. So in order for there to be a tax-free qualified distribution from a Roth IRA, 2 requirements must be satisfied. Okay, it must either be made on or after the date the IRA owner turns 59 and a half. So in this case, if the client was 61, they don't have to worry about that. They can take the money out at 59 and a half. After the death of an IRA owner, so, to the estate or beneficiary, after becoming totally disabled under the Social Security definition of total disability, or qualify for a first-time home buyer expenses up to a $10,000 limit and subject to other limitations. The second requirement, in addition to meeting one of the tests talked about previously, is that the distribution must meet the Roth contribution 5-year rule, also known as the non-exclusion period under IRC section 408A D2B. Okay, so if you search the Roth contribution 5-year rule, the rule essentially states that 5 tax years, okay, this is important, 5 tax years must pass from when the contribution is made to any Roth IRA until a qualifying distribution can be made. So because the measurement is based on tax years, this means that a contribution, not just a rollover, but an actual new contribution to a Roth IRA as late, and we're going to use this as a back example. So as late as April 15th, let's say 2014, will count as the IRA contribution for year 2013. So let's talk about this in this year. You can make a contribution to your Roth IRA as late as April 15th, 2019, okay? And it will count for the 2018 tax year, okay? So when you have a 5-year rule, if you make a contribution anytime during that particular year, you essentially get credit for the whole year, okay? So if you're making a contribution for 2018, which you can now up until April 15th, you're actually going to get credit for that full year towards a 5-year rule. So what that means is the 5-year rule starts, and so this technically means that the 5-year qualified distribution can actually be made after less than 3 years and 8 months, okay? So, a contribution on April 14th, 2018 a contribution made on April 14th of 2019, so it's made in 2019, but for 2018 would allow a tax-free distribution as early as 2023, okay? So it's really only 4 years from today, but you're making a contribution for 2018, and that starts the 5-year clock. So it's really 3 years and 8 months you could take it out. So the question is, when doesn't it make sense? One reason could be is if you're not going to meet these qualifications for some reason, okay? If you're not going to meet that and you need the money, okay? So that might not make sense. Another example is if your tax rate is just going to be too high, right? So one situation that comes up a lot is people have a very big pension, okay? So let's say your pension's already $5,000 or $6,000 a month. You're going to be pushed into a pretty high tax bracket at that point. So anything you convert from pre-tax to Roth, you're going to be pushed up into a pretty high tax bracket. So that might not make sense. But I did have a case recently where doing the numbers, right, where we actually pushed it all the way to the 24% tax bracket, so beyond the 22, and did those Roth conversions early on, did make sense because the amount of income sources, the fixed income sources were so high that it did make sense down the road, like after the particular client turned 70 and a half, and you had RMDs or required minimum distributions started to kick in, their gross income just went so high that the strategy of doing Roth conversions early on, even though it pushed them to a very high tax bracket, lowered their adjusted gross income by starting at about $30,000 and throughout retirement increased to about $50,000 per year that were reducing income. So that's $10,000 a year, of taxes that we're going to be saving or more, maybe $12,000 because you're going to be in a 32% tax bracket ongoing. So those are some situations where it might not make sense, but if you're in a situation where you have some money put aside, okay, whether that's through a Roth that's already open or through a taxable account, and maybe you have some cash put aside, and you can use that money to fund your lifestyle, okay, in between when you retire and when you decide to draw Social Security, so that maybe that could be any time after you retire, but maybe you want to wait to withdraw till 65, 67, or even 70. Each of those years in between, you're going to have an opportunity to convert a certain amount of money. So let's say you had a small pension of, let's say it was $28,950, okay? To stay in the tax bracket, that would give you $50,000 that you can increase your income from the $28,950 up to $78,950. And so in that case, you could potentially move over $50,000 of pre-tax money over to a Roth account, pay the taxes on that, and in the 12% tax bracket, let's see what that would be. Okay, so let's say you're going to add an additional $50,000, and 12% of that is you'd pay $6,000 of taxes in that year. Okay, so to do that, you would move money from a pre-tax IRA or 401k over to your Roth IRA or 401k. You would owe a $6,000 additional in taxes, so you'd have to take that money out of your savings, and then you'd have to cover your lifestyle in between. But if you did that each year, and let's say you had 5 years to do that, you can move over $50,000 a year, plus you're going to get the growth in between, hopefully, because you're going to be investing that money. Pretty simply, you can get another $250,000 or more over to a tax-free account. So there's multiple benefits to that, okay? One, your Roth IRA now, that money that's in there is no longer under the RMD rules, okay? Because Roth IRAs don't have RMD requirements at 70.5. You can take that money out whenever you want. Number two is, if you were to use some of that money, you've now given yourself some tax diversification, because now you have pre-tax money, you have post-tax money from your savings, and you have tax-free money now in a Roth account that once that money's in there for 5 years, you can use that, hopefully when you turn 70.5 and beyond, to keep your tax brackets in a certain level to where you don't get charged extra money on Medicare and for other things that may increase that. And you might be able to even keep your Social Security from being taxed as much and than you would if you would have had all the money pre-tax. So, and that's kind of a long answer to answer this, but there's some other things we need to think about when it's coming to doing a Roth conversion. So hopefully everything I said makes sense, but sometimes I don't. So I do my best, but I am definitely not perfect when it comes to that. So let's jump into the next question. Okay, so this is a offshoot of the previous question. Okay, so let's see here. My question is an offshoot of Dick's above, so I guess that was Dick's question. Is this always true, or is it always true that Roths cannot be accessed for 5 years? Hence, starting 1 year later might not be a brilliant idea. Being a person that thought she had her bases covered, I missed the Roth importance till now. So the 5-year Roth rule gets a little more interesting if you already have a Roth IRA open. So for any of you that have some time before retirement and you haven't opened a Roth IRA, okay? If you're thinking about some of the things we talk about here, some of these advanced planning techniques when it comes to like partial Roth conversions, I would highly recommend you open a Roth today, even if you just put $100 in it, because the Roth IRA rule starts when you open your first Roth account, okay? The conversion rule is different, okay? The conversion rule is different, but once you open your first Roth account, so let's say you already have a Roth IRA open, once the 5 years passes, or you hit 59.5, that's the second condition. But if you're going to be younger than that, so let's say you're 50, you have to wait at least 5 years for that money to come out. Then you're going to set yourself up to be able to withdraw from your Roth earlier than you expected. So I think this question here has to be that this particular person, I can't see names, it doesn't show me on my screen here, so I apologize for not using your name, but it sounds like they haven't opened an Roth IRA at all. And so let's base that based on the fact they haven't opened that. So if you're going to do a conversion, then yes. So once you do that first conversion, that's going to start that 5-year rule, okay? So you're going to start your 5-year rule in the first year. So let's say you wanted to do conversions between 61 and let's say 66, because that's when you're full retirement age, and that's when you are going to get your first Social Security. So once you do the first conversion in the first year, that starts the rule, okay? So then when you do the second year, that's your second year of contributions, third year, fourth year, and fifth year. So after the 5th year, that's when you can then pull out your first year contribution if you wanted to, without any sort of penalties or taxes or anything like that. So, I'm not sure who wrote this question, but, if you're going to do this, you might as well start the clock, and get the clock going. I do think starting one later, it can't really be a bad idea overall. It can't be horrible, but looking at where you're putting your money, you do want to look at what makes the most sense when it comes to your tax brackets pre and post retirement. But throwing in $100 into a Roth IRA just so you have that account open and you start the clock, I don't think that's really a bad idea. I don't think that can be a bad idea because at least gives you some options and you start the clock with that. So one thing, let me see here. I had some notes here I want to talk about with this. Okay, let's talk about the second 5-year rule for Roth conversion. So as the name implies, the second 5-year rule applies not to new Roth contributions, but to Roth conversions from pre-tax retirement accounts and determines whether the Roth conversion principal, okay, will be penalty free. So to meet the 5-year rule for Roth conversions, the measuring period is 5 tax years, okay, which essentially means that any Roth conversion deemed to have occurred as of January 1st of that year. So if you make it your first Roth conversion in November or December, which actually that's what I recommend, because we no longer have the recharacterization rule. Okay, the recharacterization rule went away with the new tax plan where you could recharacterize back to pre-tax if you wanted to. That's gone. So, but if you make your first conversion at the end of the year in November, December, it actually counts starting as of January 1st, that first year. So that's from Treasury Regulation 1.408A-6 Q&A-5B, okay? So since the conversions must occur by December 31st in any given year, their 5-year period will always start in the calendar year in which the conversion occurs. So any conversion between January 1st and December 1st of 2018 will count as a 2018 conversion. Same thing for 2019, okay? But anything in 2019 will count as a 2019 conversion. So obviously we passed 2018, so you can't get that going. But in 2019, if you do it anytime this year, it will count for this year, even if you did it in December. Okay, so that's something that I think is really important to know. Let's see here. So let's contrast this because we're talking about conversions here. Okay, so conversions only count in the year that they're done. Okay, it starts January 1st of the year that they're done, but you can't do them after December 31st and count them for the year prior. Contributions are actually different. So if you're, in this particular case, someone's asking about, hey, I can't access for 5 years, but if you put money in and you make a contribution, say today or before April 15th of 2019, and you make that contribution specifically for 2018, because you can designate it as that, when you make your contribution, you've essentially started your clock a year earlier, right? So it would be something that I think, I don't know your whole situation here, obviously, but, that does essentially take a year off of your waiting period. So maybe that will help you out. I hope that does give you a little bit more clarity on that. So let me see what else I have on this before I jump to the next question. So hopefully that helps. Do you guys have any questions about that? And does that make sense before I jump into anything different? Okay, I don't see any questions. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay, let me see what the next question is. So let's get this one out of here. Okay, what is our next question? Okay. I think this was Alex. I saw Alex had originally posted this. So let's see. If you guys want, if you guys want to have your name show up, I have to technically invite you. So I'm going to put this invitation down. I don't know where I can put this actually. Let's see if I can put this in the group. I'm going to put an invitation so that I can invite you if you want to have your name shown, because I can't just do it automatically. Facebook has, even though if you don't think so, Facebook does have some good privacy things in there that tries to protect you. So I'll get to that in just a second. Okay. Once it comes up. Let's see if I can get this in the comments. Okay, so I'm going to make a comment, guys, and then if you want to have your name show up or whatever, and then I'm going to post this in here. Give me just a second. This live streaming takes a lot of computer power. I have a MacBook Pro, but it still is a little bit brutal when it comes to the drain on the speed. Okay, so let's go back here. Okay, so let's go to our next question. I think this is from Alex. What is your number one advice for those that are in our mid-50s, 5 to 10 years away from retirement? Okay, and I saw multiple people ask this question as well. So I'm getting some feedback here. There we go. So most people ask this question. So if you're in your 50s, okay, I know there's a lot of folks in this group that are probably completely freaking out, and they're like finally, woke up and they're like, oh, I have 10 years left, or I have 8 years left until I have to retire, okay? The good news is you have time, okay? The bad news is if you started late, you're going to have to be a little bit more extreme when it comes to exactly how you're looking at your situation for retirement. And you're going to have to take it very seriously, right? Time is the ultimate factor that you're working against here, because any money you invest now, compound interest has less time than it did in your 30s or 40s, right? You may not have as many years left to work, right? If the market has a correction, you may not have as many years to recover from that, right? So there's a lot of things in here that we need to be conscious of. But what's my number one advice? So where would I start? Where would I start if you're in your 50s, and how would I coach you essentially to have the best outcome? The first thing I would look at is I would ask yourself, do you have the right habits, behaviors, and mindsets in place? Okay. Maybe some of you guys thought I was going to talk about how much money do you have, right? I actually don't think that's the number one thing. The number one thing I think for me, do you have the right habits, behaviors, and mindset in place? Like number one, let's start with the habits, okay? Are you currently saving a percentage of your income every single month? Or, a lot of folks in their 50s, what I found is, they're kind of this sandwich generation, they call them, right? So they still have parents that are alive, and then they have kids that they're trying to provide for at the same time. So the parents and the kids are kind of like the bread, and they're the meat in the middle, right? And normally in your 50s, those are some of your highest income years. And when your parents are already older, and let's say your parents are at least in their 70s, and maybe they're not working and they're not generating an income, and maybe they haven't done as good of a job as they should have to plan. And so you feel obligated to help them, right? And to maybe, help support them, whether it's financially, emotionally, or with your time. And honestly, it's your parents, right? And so it's really hard to just say, oh, I can't do anything for them. That's not realistic. But at the same time, it's like you have to think about your situation, because if you don't get the right things in place for yourself, then it's just going to be a continuing cycle where then in the next 20 years, you're going to be looking for your kids to help you out essentially. And that's not ideal, right? That's not what you want to do. So where I would say to start is, do you have the right habits in place for yourself? So are you contributing at least a certain percentage, at least 10, 15? And if you're starting late, you may need to be contributing 20 or 25% of your income to retirement accounts to make sure you have enough money. Okay, but we'll get to that in a second. But do you have that habit in place where you're saving money and you're making sure that you're really watching what you're doing, and you're setting yourself up for the best possible experience in retirement and setting yourself up, okay? And then the mindset, is really tough sometimes, because if your kids are in their 20s and 30s and they're struggling, and it's hard to see them struggle, because it's probably the most brutal time, I would say, when you have student loans, the cost of housing. There's a lot of brutal things that can go on for young people trying to get their financial situation in order, especially if they haven't figured their life out yet and got into a career that they're self-sustaining. But the first thing, when it comes to habits and behaviors and mindset, I would say is you have to follow the oxygen mask rule, you could say. So think about when you get on a plane, right? When they go over what to do if there is an emergency, the first thing they say to do is put on your oxygen mask first, because if you don't, and you have others around you, like let's say small children, and you try to take care of them first, and there's a big change in cabin pressure, and you pass out because you didn't get your oxygen mask on, well, even though your young child may have their oxygen mask on, they're going to be left alone to figure it out on their own. And so that really is hurtful in the longer term, versus if you would have got your mask on first. So, you really need to make sure that you're going to be in a good situation, and that you're not sacrificing yourself and your retirement initially. Okay, so I think that's number one. So are you saving every month? Are you keeping track of your expenses? Are you planning for the future to make sure that you're going to be on track? Okay. Number two is, have you figured out how much you really need to have saved after your fixed income sources come in to cover a comfortable retirement for you, okay? So if you have a pension, then have you figured out how much your pension is going to be and what percentage of your income that's going to cover? Many people don't have a pension. It's really not all that common anymore. But maybe you only have Social Security, okay? And so have you figured out how much Social Security is going to cover for you? And this is where your Social Security timing really comes in. It becomes very, very important to consider not taking Social Security as early as possible if finances are something that you're a little bit worried about. Because if you draw too early, you're really sacrificing that benefit for the rest of your life. And, just talking with some of my peers, and I've been sharing this with my clients, is talking with some of my peers that do retirement planning as well, is, in all honesty, the right answer for most people because of longevity. I think a lot of people are underestimating how long they're going to live. It's going to be a serious crisis if we don't prepare for this, because we're going to be seeing people living to 100 and 110 very commonly. It's already happening, number one. But if you're in your 50s and you're healthy, there's no real health concerns, there's a very good chance you could be living to 100 or 110 or even 120, right? This is going to be very real. You may think I'm crazy, but just watch what happens over these next 30 to 40 years and how often you're seeing people live this long. So that timing of Social Security, from our perspective as retirement planners, the normal recommendation now is going to be at least full retirement age, if not 70. That's going to be our normal recommendation, because drawing too early could really put some strain on your long-term success. If you have a bunch of money put aside, or you have a very little money put aside and you have to draw early, or maybe you have a health condition, different story, okay? So I always have to separate that, because I get a lot of angry comments when I talk about delaying Social Security in here. But if you're healthy and you can any way possibly do it, timing your Social Security to give you enough benefit, to really give you some basic support beyond your assets, I think is going to be really important. So going back to the advice for in your 50s, figuring out, what do you need? What sort of income do you need, or what will you need in 15 or 20 years when you retire? Or maybe that's a little bit long. Let's say you're 55, so you're looking at 10 to 15 years. And if you want to retire at 65, how much income do you need to survive, okay? And then once you figure that number out, then you need to take a step back and say, okay, how much is my Social Security going to cover, okay? And then you're going to have your floor, and then you're going to have Social Security, which is really your income floor, and then there's going to be where you need to fill in up here, and that's going to need to come from, assets, part-time work, different income sources that you have along the way to fill that in. So I would really get very serious about figuring out what those numbers are and what you really need to do to hit that goal. Because if you have 10 years, that's a good amount of time to figure out, like, hey, I need to be putting away 20 or 25%, and I got to find a way to do it. I got to cut my budget. I need to earn more income. I need to get a promotion or maybe find a new job and find a way to create enough income to where I can hit that goal to help me meet my income needs. So that would probably be like it's kind of a long answer, but it's my number one advice. If you're in your 50s, 5 to 10 years away, I would get very serious about figuring out, are you on track for retirement or not? And if you're not, what adjustments do you need to make? And if you're in that sandwich generation that I talked about, where you have pressure from kids that aren't where they need to be yet, and parents that need financial support, you might have to have some really serious talks and really let them know that, hey, I love you and I support you, but this is all I can do right now, because if I do more, then I'm going to put myself in jeopardy, and that's not the right thing to do. You have to be really strong about that. And to be honest, these are tough conversations to have, and you might have to have it multiple times for people to really understand this. But if your kids are in their 20 or 25 or 30 and they're living at home for free, you got to have a serious conversation. They have to get out. They should be out of the house already, but they have to get a job. They have to be contributing to rent, and they have to be doing something to be participating. They can't just sit around and act like, it's all just going to be okay and you're going to support them forever. These are really tough conversations that if you're in that sandwich generation, I recommend you have, because I've seen the other side, guys. I've seen the other side where people get to be 65, 67, or 75 or 80, and they just don't have enough, right? They just don't have enough. They didn't take planning seriously, and now they're sitting there hoping, praying, stressed out, and honestly, it causes more health issues than anything else, the financial stress of worrying about running out of money. So, that's, if you're in your 50s and you have 5 to 10 years, you're in the right place. You're in this group. I'd be reading, learning, absorbing everything. I would invest in getting some financial advice, right? I'm impartial, okay? I'm a financial advisor, but I know for a fact, I've seen folks that I've worked with in their early 50s, and just by making a couple different moves, and some of those moves have been, don't pay off your house early. Get all that money in your pre-tax account, and then we'll pay off your house in retirement. And that's got them an extra $100,000 because they made that move properly because of the tax savings and the tax bracket difference in retirement. get some advice and really get serious about making sure you're on track. I mean, that's really the most important thing I could say. So I'm gonna leave that question alone because I talked about it a lot, but if you need anything else, go ahead and put the question down below and I'll jump into there, okay? Okay, so let's go up to our next question here. Let's see what we got. Okay. Okay. Here's one that we get all the time, right? So annuities. Okay, we love annuities because they give us guaranteed income, right? So I used to be like really against annuities, to be honest with you, because in all honesty, if you know how to set up your portfolio properly, you can actually create an income stream that gives you as good or better of an income stream than any annuity can even give you right now. But on top of that, you are still going to own the asset base, because once you buy an annuity, it goes to the insurance company and it's gone, right? If you die after your second annuity payment, the money's gone, right? But if you were to set up something like a bond ladder or a CD ladder leading into a bond ladder, leading into some low volatility, maybe some dividend stocks, and then some higher risk stuff later, you can really build out a portfolio that's going to do much better for you on the long term than an annuity in general, okay? But are there any good annuities? I have done training here before about a couple of annuities that I go into more detail, so I'm not going to talk about the detail today. But I'm not totally against you annuitizing a portion of your retirement assets. And the reason is because annuities can be a great hedge against longevity risk, right? So the risk of running out of money. But do I think you should be putting 50, 60, 70, 80, 90%, or 100% of your money into an annuity? No, I really don't think that's the right idea. Because the big problem with annuities is, let's say your first year return looks good. So let's say like your first year return is like 4 or 5%, right? Well, that sounds great. But most annuities, unless you pay for it, don't have a inflation adjustment included, right? So there's no inflation rider included on an annuity unless you pay for it. And if you pay for it, what that means is you get a lower payout early on, so it's going to take you a lot longer to break even. So that causes a lot of issues. But there are something called like a single premium immediate annuity that can be really good. You know, I've seen 4%, pretty common, 5% even, where you can start and get that income stream. Let's say you put 10% or 15% of your portfolio into that, and you create that bottom line income stream just to give you more comfort, right? At the end of the day, like I explained, you can definitely do better with a bond ladder or really setting your portfolio in a way to do different sections, and I can't think of the name of it right now, but the bucket strategy, right? That's what I'm trying to say. You can set up your income in different buckets so that you have guaranteed income for 1, 2, 3, or even up to 15 years. You can do a 15-year ladder to get guaranteed income for 15 years, and then have some other money growing for you beyond that, so that each year you sell off a portion of your money for that year, collect that, and you put that aside that you're going to live off that. Then we sell off kind of your best performing assets, buy some more of the lower performing assets, and kind of manage that income strategy on an annual basis. That's usually a better way. But if you want to create a little bit of income stream, something like that might be good. Single premium immediate annuity. And then there's also something called a qualified longevity annuity contract. I think that's what it is. It's QLAC. So those can be great as well, because what you do is you buy those early on. So you can put a portion of your income, and I think the maximum now is about $150,000 you can put into it. And you can buy those inside your IRA, and then that money sits there, and essentially it's a deferred annuity, okay? And so most people, what they do is they defer that until like 75, 80, or 85, and then at that point they'll get a payout. So then that will hedge against that longevity risk on the back end of retirement. But again, if you don't live that long, then then you give up that money in a sense, right? So those are a couple that I think can be okay. Not a big fan of this variable annuity stuff, because the internal costs are just so expensive, and if anybody tries to tell me there's no cost, then they're just wrong. You're either going to pay cost internally, or you're going to get they're going to put an index in there, which they can switch out the index generally anytime they want, and then all this back testing stuff is just so confusing. All the trickery they can do inside these contracts, they make them very, very general. And then on top of that, let's say for example they use an S&P 500 index, okay? And let's say you have a 60% participation rate. So what that means is whatever the S&P returns, you're going to get 60% of that up to, let's say, 6%, okay? And then you'll have a floor, and let's say you don't get lower than 0 or lower than 1 or lower than 2. So if the market goes down, you're protected against that. And so that sounds good to you, right? But the problem is a big chunk of the S&P 500's returns have been the dividends, right? That are spit out every year over time and then reinvested. And when you're buying these annuity products, they don't usually give you the dividend included as part of your overall return. So you're just only basing that on the index, and then it's just a percentage of the index. So whether you pay fees ongoing or you have an opportunity cost that's lost because you're not in the market, it's just usually not a great deal, right? It's just usually not a great deal, and that's why I really stay away from those, and I think there's better ways to do it. And I know some folks are very passionate here. They have some variable annuities, and that's okay. To each their own. But I think there's better ways to do it where not only do you own the asset base, you can keep your costs a lot lower, and you can do whatever you want with that money at that point. So there's no surrender periods, like annuities have, like sometimes 10-year surrender periods, up to 12 years sometimes. Or if you take your money out, you have to pay a big fee, and that's the commission that went to your broker that sold it. So they're like those two that I mentioned, they're okay. But that's pretty much, I'm not saying there's no other things that are out there, but as a general statement, I think those are where you want to look if you're looking for an annuity. Okay. So let's see here. Okay. So here's a question about a pension. Okay. When getting ready to take your pension and you have to choose your spouse, 50% with no deduction, 75% with 200 less, or 100% for 425 with no COLA. Okay, 55-year-old wife, 56. So I'd have to know a lot more about this. But in general, this is tough because I don't have enough information really to make a good decision. One thing I would need to know is what's the total amount and how much of your income need is this particular pension going to cover, right? Because if you were to go to get, let's say you had 100% beneficiary remainder that goes to them, 100% gets paid out until their death, but you lose $425 a month. What's the difference? Is it like you're already getting $5,000 and $54.25 and it goes to $5,000? Not as big a deal. But if you're going from like $2,000 down to $1,600 or something, that's a big deal right there because that's like 25% less. So I'd probably have to know more about this. But in general, I try to look at the different options and I look at the other income sources, okay? So if I have someone that has a pension and they're saying, hey, should I do a beneficiary and take a little bit less so that my spouse can have the remainder after they pass? Or should I go for the higher amount and just, have it go with me at the end of the day, right? So if you have the higher amount, the benefit there is you're going to need less draw from your other assets, most likely. So that could be a benefit there where you can leave your spouse more assets. Another benefit of delaying could be that if you take the higher amount and then now you can delay your Social Security because you don't need that money. And so you're building them up maybe 25 or 35% more of a Social Security benefit so that if you can delay till 70, let's say, and now your income is $1,000 a month higher and they're going to get that benefit forever, well, then that might make sense, So I would really have to do the numbers and look at the what the potential trade-offs are for something like this. So you really have to look at those numbers. So I would definitely recommend you get a pension analysis. That's something we definitely do for clients, but you have to do the numbers, okay? Folks, this is not just like a general, let's look at what you get paid out the first year and let's say it's 6% and can I do better than 6% in the market? Or then I'm gonna take the pension. No, that's not the right way to do it. You really need to look at all the different options you have and then look at the rest of your scenario and say, what are the different outcomes depending on which pension selection you use. And you usually need a pretty sophisticated software to do that. And again, that's something I would definitely recommend getting a plan done for so that you make the right choice because getting this right could be worth tens of thousands of dollars, like no question, or even hundreds of thousands of dollars for you. So that's really the best I could say without knowing more information, okay? So, but it's a good question. I think everybody should actually do the numbers on that, okay? Let's see. I talked about Alex's question, so I had a couple people that have that. So someone just asked about this question here. Okay, if I started the Roth now but funded it for the 5-year or for 2018, I answered this already, is the 5-year minimum to draw on it now or from 2018. So it's 2018. So that's the great news. You still have until April, guys. So great time to be asking this question. You can get money in for 2018 until April 15th or so. I don't recommend you wait that long. But at least if you get something in there that starts your 5-year rule And so at that point, you would be good on drawing your earnings after that point, okay? And if you're 59 and a half, you meet that rule anyway, so it's not that big a deal. Okay, let's see. Okay, this question, here's our next question. What percentage would you suggest for Roth and traditional? My current distribution are 3% Roth and 2% traditional. One, I would probably recommend, if you can, upping the overall percentage, right? I think that would be, if you could do more, unless that's going to max out the account, for example. But this sounds like you don't have a 401k at work. But if you have like a 401k or a plan that matches at work, you always want to get your match. That's no question. And then the next question is, do you go pre-tax or do you go to something like a Roth after that, right? So I would look at current and future tax brackets for that. So if you're sitting in a 12% tax bracket comfortably, Roth pretty much makes sense. It's really going to be hard to beat that long term. And if anything, taxes are going to go back up at some point. So Roth is tax-free. So that's probably a better way to go. But if you're sitting at like a 32% tax bracket right now, then you may want to consider going traditional and then doing Roth conversions or just drawing that money, as needed in retirement. So that's how I would look at that particular question. Pretty straightforward. Let's see here. Okay, let's see. Okay, so let's talk about this because this has something related to Alex's question, but it's for single people, okay? So single people, okay? All the single ladies, right? All the single ladies, as they say, or all the single men. You have a different situation in a sense, right? Because you don't have another spouse in the home that if something were to happen to you, that you might be able to have some care from somebody else, right? So, and in general, the current stats I'm looking at is that the woman's going to live 15 or 14 years longer than the men on average. So most women are going to end up being in a single position anyways, right? So I think this is a really good question to talk about. So I think some of the things that are really important to look at for yourself is, one, if you were to get sick, okay? If you were to need any sort of long-term care, and long-term care is defined as you can't do any sort of your daily required activities. So if you can't dress yourself, you can't cook for yourself, can't clean up after yourself, that's when a long-term care event would happen. And so you want to be thinking about, what's going to happen, right? If something were to happen to you in that case, okay? So in today's dollars, part-time in-home care for about 30 hours a week is generally going to run you about $40,000 to $50,000, okay? $40,000 to $50,000 per year. So do you have that money put aside where you can self-fund that for 2, 3, 5, 7, 10 years if you had to? And if not, okay, we'll talk about that in a second. If you were to have to go into a long-term care facility, a shared room is going about $85,000 per year, and a private room is about $100,000 per year. And this is nationwide averages, so some places are higher. California and New York are definitely higher. But even in middle America, we're looking at about $100,000 per year for full-time care, okay? Your average stay for women is about 2.6 years, which means a lot stay longer and a lot stay shorter. For men, it's about 2.8 years. So if you're single, something you really want to think about is, can you fund your own long-term care scenario if you were to need long-term care? Okay, if you can't easily, then you really want to start thinking about a backup plan. Like, do you have a family member that can help you? Do you have a friend that can help you? I mean, you really don't want to end up in a Medicaid facility if you can avoid it. Medicaid facilities, I've seen good and bad stories, but the big problem is a lot of times they'll have 2, 3, or 4 year waiting periods for you to get in. So if you have a long-term care event and you can't get in for 2, 3, or 4 years, even if the government's going to pay for it because you run out of money, if you have a 2 or 3 year delay, you're really going to be facing some challenges if that's your plan, right? Because a lot of folks just say, I'm going to throw my hands up and the government's just going to take care of me. Not really the best strategy. So I would really consider looking into some sort of long-term care insurance. And there's multiple ways to do it. You can do it in a way to where you have like a shorter elimination period. So your elimination period means you'd have to have like 90 days of care, for example, before your policy would kick in. But you can get longer elimination periods, 6 months or even 12 months. So if you have a longer elimination period, the cost for long-term care insurance is going to be a lot lower. So you will have to cover, let's say, the first year out of your assets, but let's say you have some assets put aside and you have a little bit of a pension and some Social Security. Well, could you make it for a year with some in-home care until you got transferred into a facility? So there's kind of multiple ways to look at this and planning around that. But that would probably be my biggest concern if you're single is, what happens if you're, if you need care and you have no one else there to help you out and you have to go into a facility. Really need to look into that financially and how that's going to impact you on the long term and what that's really going to look like for you if you have no one else around to support you. Another thing you might want to think about is moving closer, right, to some relatives. Like, do you have a younger cousin, daughter, son, somebody, nephew, niece that could help you out with some part-time care? That might be something you want to consider, is moving closer so that if something were to happen, then you have somebody close by that can stop in and check on you, help you do the basic things, because if you can't afford full-time care, and we're talking today's dollars, guys, being at $100,000 a year, if you're 60 and you're most likely not going to see a long-term care event until you're 85, well, we're talking maybe $300,000 a year, right? Because inflation, right? And it's going to go up. So that could be really, really important for you on a long term. Another thing to think about if you're single is putting like some good estate planning documents into place so that if something were to happen, and very quickly, let's say you just passed away overnight and, peacefully in your sleep, you want to make sure that everything you own is going to go where you want it to go, okay? And it will follow your wishes, because one of the worst things you can do is get a bunch of money into someone's hands that's not ready to handle that, right? That can be actually really bad. If you get it into someone's hands who's a drug addict, an alcoholic, a spender, and then just blow through all that money that you put aside and saved and really sacrificed for, that's horrible. That's a really horrible way to have your legacy transferred on. So I would get everything in writing to make sure that that's taken care of. If you're in certain states like California, where we have a, the price the lawyers charge if you don't have an estate plan in place and your documents is based on the percentage of gross estate, you definitely want to get, like revocable living trust in place, healthcare directives, financial directives, get all that stuff dialed in so that you don't have to go through probate and you can avoid that headache. I know in California right now, it's pushing 2 years to get through probate. So what that means is during that time, someone's going to have to support your estate. They're going to have to pay your mortgage, they're going to have to pay your bills, they're going to have to keep your lights on, keep your yard maintained that whole time until probate is completed. And so it's just a total nightmare. So I would definitely say to get your estate planning documents in place, have a plan for long-term care in place, and then make sure that, again, going back to timing Social Security, looking at a proper withdrawal rate for you from your assets so you don't run out of money is really, really important. Okay, so I think those are some things that I would start with if you are single. Okay, so hopefully that was helpful. Let's see, I'm going to do a couple more here. I said we're going a little bit long. I'm already over. I'm almost at an hour. Wow. Okay. Well, you guys are still on with me, so I'll keep going and go for a little bit longer here to see who else I can help. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so this question here, I'm going to try to answer it. I think I know what it means. Okay. So if I need $3,000 a month to pay all my bills at retirement, so let's say 59.5 this year, and I want to wait to collect until 70 for Social Security, and I want to just use my IRA, how much would I need to have my IRA to be okay until age 70? So let's say, you have 10 years basically, right? So 59.5, so let's say 60, you have 10 years. And so you're going to need to support $3,000 a month, okay? That's $3,000 a month after taxes, right? So you're going to have to pay taxes on whatever you withdraw from your IRA. So depending on other income sources, but let's say you wanted to cover $3,000, and let's say you're in a 12%. Well, yeah, let's say you're in a 12% tax bracket. Let's say 20%, because in California we have state and federal, and anything above $45,000 you're going to pay 10% here in state tax, which is horrible, guys. That's why California is just crazy. But let's say you need a $3,000 to survive, and let's say you're in a 20% tax bracket, then you'd have to pull right about $3,600 or so to make sure you pull enough money to cover your taxes and that you can live off of. Probably about $3,700 each month. So if you did $3,700 and for 10 years, then you're looking at, that's $37,000. Probably need an inflation number in there. So let's say $40,000 put aside to cover your expenses between when you were to, say if you retired at 60 and you wanted to wait till 70 to collect Social Security. That's just pretty basic math. What you want to look at though is, are there any other surprises that are going to come up? Is there healthcare? Is there, having activities you want to do, vacations, goals you want to do, visiting family? So you got to build all that in and then put in a factor of for the taxes and inflation over that time. But that's pretty basic, straightforward. So hopefully that would be helpful for you. Let's see. What do we got here? Okay, so this is a good question. It's a long one, but it's a good one. Okay, it's a big question. It's covering my whole face. Let me move this down. Let me actually just turn off my little name here to make it easy. You guys, hopefully by now you guys have seen that. Okay, so let's move this down just a little bit. Okay, so pre-retirement Roth conversion info. Husband and I are self-employed and each have simple IRAs and a regular IRA. We are seriously considering retirement in the very near future, 1 to 3 years. We are each 59, and I am thinking we need to convert simple IRAs into Roths. We have lots of time before distributions kick in. I know getting our income down will be key for taxes on money converted. Any info on this subject will be helpful. Yes. Okay, so this is, we talked about this a little bit, but so let's say you're 59 now, and let's say you want to retire at 62. Okay, I'll just use that number because that's 3 years from now. So at 62, you have a choice. You can take your Social Security benefit or you cannot take it, right? But then you also have from 62 to 65 that you're going to have to cover healthcare from somewhere because Medicare is not going to kick in until 65. So you're either looking at a private place plan a private marketplace plan or, a ACA plan like Obamacare or maybe a health share plan, something like that. But you got to figure out how much you need to survive off that. And if you can cover that in between. But if you're 62 and you are looking at doing some Roth conversions, that sounds to me like you have some money put aside. What I would be doing now, if you have 3 years, is making sure you have enough money either in a Roth account today, that's been open for at least 5 years, but before you retire, or in just some cash put aside or a taxable account so that you can live off of that. Because if you want to do conversions, you're going to increase your income, right, after retirement. So if you're going to convert money from pre-tax to post-tax and put it in Roth, you're going to be increasing your income. So if you're going to do this strategy, I would like for you to get as much as possible from pre-tax to post-tax. So the more money you have put aside in a taxable account or in an available account of some sort that doesn't have to do with retirement, the more you're going to be able to have to support your income and the less you're going to need to draw off your account so that you can do this strategy, okay? Then I would look at those two variables. Those are kind of two parts of the puzzle piece. And then I would be looking at your Social Security timing, okay? And I would say, okay, well, how can we time your Social Security to give you the best benefit long-term, right? But then not interfere with your Roth conversions. Because if you take Social Security early and you want to do Roth conversions, well, there's a very good chance you're going to be pushing yourself into provisional income territory where now your Social Security gets taxed at either 50% or up to 85% of it gets taxed. So your net take home from Social Security is going to be a lot less. So it really doesn't make a lot of sense to take, say both benefits of Social Security while you're doing these Roth conversions. It makes more sense generally to delay. So figuring out those puzzle pieces, right? That's what I'd be looking at if you were my client. I would say, okay, so how much money do we have pre-tax? How much do we need to live, after retirement to cover our basic expenses? And then after that money, how much can we convert from pre-tax to Roth and not go above a certain tax bracket? So whether that's 12 or 22, depending on how much you have, either bracket can make sense. If you have like a big pre-tax account, then maybe going up to 22 does make sense because your RMDs are going to hit you. But by getting as much money over from pre-tax to Roth before 70, you've given yourself multiple benefits, okay? Now you lowered the amount that you're going to have to take out for a required minimum distribution at 70 and a half. And then you've also given yourself a place to take tax-free money from anytime, because I have clients that have all their money pre-tax, and it kind of sucks that every time they want to take money out to just maybe make a gift to a relative or go on a vacation, it's always a taxable event. So if you're before 65, before Medicare, well, now every time you want to take a chunk of money out, we have to look at, well, how's that going to affect not only your tax bracket, but also what you're paying for medical insurance? Because if you're getting a subsidy and your subsidy goes down $300 a month because you took money out early, well, now that costs you additional $3,600 a year, right? So there's a lot of variables to look at when you're really getting this strategy right. It's not just as simple as, oh, I'm going to move some money from my pre-tax to my Roth account. You really need to look at all these variables, and that's why, I'm biased again, but I recommend working with somebody who knows how to do this stuff and seeing if it makes sense, because it can be very valuable if you get it right. Like, let's say you have like a few $100,000 even in pre-tax money. By getting half of that or more to a Roth account, you could easily get yourself an additional $100,000 to $150,000 of retirement income, because you're saving that money on taxes down the road after RMDs kick in. So hopefully that helps, and hopefully you feel like I answered your question. But I think that was, this is a very popular question in this group. So hopefully that helps out a lot of people here. Okay, let's see. Someone here asked about the group program. That's coming up. I'm sending out emails. I sent out a few already, and I'm sending out more this week. I'm taking people first come, first serve. It is not too late to sign up. If you want to sign up, you can sign up, but I do have people in the queue that are going to be going first. So if you did want to sign up, then you can do that. And that's at keepitsimplefinancial.com/group. But that is right now, it's going to be a little while before I have any new people come in, but you can definitely sign up. So it's keepitsimplefinancial.com/group. The cost is going to be depending on what you need. So I'm going to have a conversation with everybody. And right now, honestly, the cost is $0 until I make sure the program is right for you, because this is not going to be right for everybody. So that's why I'm going to set up calls with everybody individually. I want to make sure I find out what you need, and if what this program is going to provide matches up, then that's great. If you need more assistance, then I'm going to tell you straight up that it's probably not the right thing for you, and recommend something else for you. So I want to make sure it's right for you before I do that, and we'll talk about that in our phone calls, okay? So let's see here. Okay, so we're coming up on an hour, guys. We're just crossed an hour. I'm going to do one more, and then we're going to wrap up for today. Let me try to find one that I think could be beneficial. Let's see. Okay, so let's talk about this one. Okay, should I max out my Roth 401k if I still get the match with the Roth? Tax deduction won't put me in a lower bracket. You could. I mean, there's no reason not to max out your Roth 401k, but Roth 401k have different rules than Roth IRA, okay? So if you're looking to activate your 5-year window, I would definitely get the match in your Roth 401k account. And if you don't have a Roth IRA open one, put whatever you want to put there. And then once you max that out, go back to your Roth 401k, because in the Roth IRA, you're going to have a lot more options when it comes to marketplace funds, right? So, and plus you're going to start that 5-year period. And then plus, you could take that money out at any time if you needed to, the contributions you have. So that's probably what I would do in that case, and in this particular situation, because 401ks in general just don't have as many options. Sometimes they have good options, but you can get better options in the open market when you open up your own Roth IRA outside of that. So we went an hour, guys. It seems like this Q&A format, if you guys like this, please let me know. I'm happy to do more of these, because I spend a lot of time preparing our workshops and everything. But a lot of times I'm guessing on what you want to learn about, and I do look in the group for questions and things like that. But if you like these Q&As where we can just do stuff on the spot, and I can help you out with this, then please let me know. Leave a comment down below. I'm going to put this here, that if maybe I didn't get your question and maybe you want some help, I'm going to put this here for you. This is my website. If you want to schedule an appointment to chat with me to discuss your retirement planning situation, I offer one free complimentary retirement strategy session for you, okay? You go to this website, keepitsimplefinancial.com/talk, schedule an appointment that works for you. Then there'll be a form for you to fill out, and then it'll go right to my calendar page, and it'll have it all set up and all automated, okay? So it's real easy to do. But what we'll do on our call is I'll spend about 45 minutes with you, and we'll map out, what are the things you really need to take care of before retirement? What have you currently done? And then I'll ask you a bunch of questions to help you figure out, okay, you should be doing this, 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 and this. And if you want to take the game plan I give you and do it on your own, no problem. There's no charge to this. There's no catch. But if you want my help, then we can talk about what that looks like. And if it's a match, then we can talk about what it would look like to work together. Not scary at all. I try to make them really fun, really engaging, and very, very high value, okay? So if you've never scheduled a call with me before, take me up on the offer. It's complimentary, guys. It's no cost to you. But every single person I've ever spoken to, and I ask them at the end, was this helpful? I've always had people say, yes, this was helpful. I've never had anybody say, no, this was not helpful. And I don't hard sell you. There's nothing like that. It's not how it works. But we'll point out all the things you need to get right, or at least the majority of them that I can find out for you in 45 minutes. And if you want my help, we can talk about it. But if you want to do it on your own, there is no problem. You can go do that all on your own and figure it out yourself. Okay, so that's what I have for you today, guys. If you need anything else, just drop a comment on the video here, or feel free to ask a question in the group. I've been really busy lately, so getting into the group has been very tough for me, but I do my best when I can. But honestly, I do read through the answers. And you're getting some good feedback here. Some really, really smart people in this group. But I know once you get past a certain point, you need a professional at the end of the day. So I try to jump in when I can. But when it comes to getting your distribution strategy right, Roth conversions right, looking at long-term care if you need to have that, Social Security timing, and putting your whole game plan together, that's what I do. That's what I'm really a specialist in, is creating that plan for you and then helping you get that into place so that you can retire with confidence. Because doing it all on your own, there's just so much information out there, and a lot of it's bad and some of it's good. But sifting through that, it's just so much time and energy that I found that my clients just really appreciate someone that could just help them do it with a step-by-step game plan and just go from there. So that's what I have for you guys today. We'll be wrapping up, and I will see you next week if I don't talk to you in the group, all right? Have a good one, guys. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye now. Oh,